Hi, I'm Selena and welcome back to my channel. So it has been quite a while. I've had a really busy last month with starting student teaching and just personal stuff going on, and then I also have been out of Wi-Fi for a long time, so I haven't been home a lot, and when I have, I couldn't film or edit anyway. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to get this video up by next week, by Tuesday-ish, my normal day. But we will see about that. But this video really needs to go up because this is my very late July wrap up, and we're already over halfway through August, so I'm gonna keep the wrap up pretty quick because I read all these books like a month ago, so I'm really just running through basic thoughts that I've said in multiple places already. You can check my Instagram for that and my Goodreads, which are going to be both linked down below. I'm not going to do my whole stats screen, but I will just tell you what the stats are. The largest genre I read this month was fantasy with 5 books, and then I read 2 sci-fi books and then 1 contemporary in July, not this month. 4 of the books that I read were actually YA, which is not really common for me anymore, that YA is the majority of the books I read. 3 of the books were middle grade and only 2 were adult. July was sadly a month where I read a lot of 3 and 4 stars that were kind of lower on the 4-star range. So I had 4 3 stars, 3 4 stars, and just 1 5-star. But yeah, let's get into this. I think my least favorite book of the month was probably, it's gonna be a big unpopular opinion, but The Martian by Andy Weir. So this one is a highly acclaimed story about a man who is trapped on Mars. He is accidentally left on Mars and is forced to survive with only his knowledge and the meager supplies that he has, and just he really has to fight to stay alive. And so this really is a survival story that is very near future sci-fi. It's not using a bunch of crazy technology that we don't have. A lot of the stuff in this is theoretically possible. This is a book that uses a lot of real science to make the science fiction portion of it. The science fiction portion of it is that we've never had a man be on Mars growing potatoes and trying to survive there for over a year, I think is how long he's there. A lot of the knowledge he uses is not crazy impossible technology or space travel or whatever. This is very much our world set sci-fi. And that was part of my issue. This was a lot of science. This was a lot of the main character, Mark Watney, writing in his journals about all the scientific things he did that day, and it got old really quickly. And a lot of people really liked it because the science was made accessible for them. I still was a little bit lost and bored by a lot of it. And then the other reason people love this is because Mark Watney as a character is really funny. Supposedly, I didn't find him that funny. I thought his humor was kind of this is gonna sound really bad, but you know how people say that Sanderson is really bad at writing humor, and Shallan has a really dumb humor and crude middle school boy humor kind of? That was kind of Mark Watney for me. I agree with that about Sanderson, and not just Shallan either, his other books too. But I definitely felt like The Martian also fell into that trap where I was a lot of this stuff isn't funny. And then of course, because Mark Watney is alone on Mars, there's not a lot of character interactions, and so that is one of my favorite things in a book. Wasn't a lot of that. There wasn't a lot of plot other than him trying to survive, and so it really just was a kind of a miss for me on all fronts. Next, I think I'm going to talk about Zero G by Dan Wells. So this was a middle grade sci-fi. So my 2 sci-fi books were my least favorite of the month, but The Martian was one that was genuinely disappointing to me, and Zero G wasn't disappointing. It was just it was exactly what I expected it to be. It was okay. It was cute for a very short sci-fi middle grade, but it wasn't anything special to me. This book has been pitched as Home Alone in Space, and that's basically what it is. We have a boy who his whole family gets in these pods. They're part of a group that is leaving Earth, I believe, and going to another planet, and so they're put into a stasis so that they will wake up 10 million years later or something. And the boy, whose name I really can't remember, I know it's Zero, but that's not his, that's his nickname. I don't know what else his name is. Anyway, Zero, he wakes up early, way early, only a few hours after he's put to sleep, and he accidentally sort of gets embroiled in thwarting this threat to the ship. Zero G was fine. It really reminded me of a book from my childhood, which I can actually show you. So if any of you know The City of Ember by Jean Duprow, I love that book. I read it when I was like 9 and I loved it, and then I read all the other books and I liked the second book. I hated the third book and I loved the fourth book almost as much as City of Ember, if not a little bit more. They're kind of equal for me, and the fourth book was definitely the one that I reread so many times. I'm not sure I reread City of Ember more than once, but I reread The Diamond of Darkhold so many times. This is the final book in the series, and it basically follows, so like the third book in the series was a prequel to City of Ember, but People of the Sparks and this one were sequels, and this is the final book, chronologically, final book in the series. It is so good from what I remember. I remember loving this book so much, and it has a very similar trope, except we basically have two people who are trying to enter into this interesting sort of space, not space like space up there, but like an interesting sort of setting, and they're trying to find something, but they're not the only ones. And the characters were very similar in this book, except for Lena and Dune were better. Other characters, the side characters, a lot of them are very, very similar to the ones in this book. It was so similar that it was almost like Dan Wells like copied this one, but I mean, I know it's the trope, but even just the character archetypes were so similar. Anyways, all that to say, Zero G felt like a less superior version of The Diamond of Darkhold to me, and yeah, I would have rather read this. But that was really harsh though, because Zero G is cute. It's just not this book. And if I'm gonna read that plot line, I'm gonna reread this one. Then we have another one that is sort of a controversial opinion too, I guess. This could be lower. I'm gonna actually switch my order around. My next one is gonna be These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. This one was a really anticipated release of mine last year, and I finally got around to it in July, and it was good. It wasn't great for me. It wasn't all that I'd hoped it would be and more. Like the hype, it didn't match the hype for me. Like my hype for it did not, my love for it did not reach the other people's love for it, but I still think it's a good book, and it's still one that I would recommend. This is like a Romeo and Juliet retelling in like a fantasy, like 1920s Shanghai, and that was really cool. The characters were good. It just wasn't necessarily for me. It wasn't necessarily my type of story. The writing was nice, still not my writing style that I love though, so this one wasn't really for me, but I'm sure that it would be for a bunch of other people who maybe are a bit younger than me, who like Shakespeare, or who just don't and think this is better. I don't know. Then the final 3-star, and probably my favorite 3-star, is The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. This one I had a lot of mixed opinions on because it took me like 3 months to read it, first of all. And second of all, it's because this series, I've heard, is very easy to quit on because it's so slow that at times that it's like, it's so easy to stop at one of those slow parts, which I've heard does not really change. Like there's always going to be slow parts in a Wheel of Time book. But yeah, this is the first book in the Wheel of Time. I feel like I've read the first book and still don't even have the words to describe Wheel of Time, so I'm just gonna assume you've heard of it and move on. Basically, the pacing with this book specifically really got me, and I know that this is considered the weakest in the series, or one of the weakest. I loved the first like 250 pages, and then we had a stint of like 300 pages, I think, or 200 pages, where all our characters that had formed this like crew were like started traveling separately, and I found each of their plot lines there to be not as interesting, especially when Rand and Matt went to inn after inn after inn after inn after inn, and the same stuff kept happening. So like I was just really sick of the repetitive nature of this journey after a bit. Even though there was great stuff in even that middle 200 pages, there was a lot of stuff surrounding it that I did not care for. And then the ending was good, but confusing, and just a little bit like it was hard for me to appreciate it because it was so confusing. I think the world is beautiful, but the plot was not working for me. And then the characters were okay. There wasn't any that I like loved following, so I guess there's that. Basically, my feelings are so mixed that this can't really be more of a 3-star, but this is still probably the one that I have the most feelings on, other than like of the 3 stars. Moving on to the 4 stars, so there's only 2 of those, and one of them is there's 3 4-stars, but one's a 4.5 star. The first one is Crown of Feathers by Nikki Prout-Prado, which I actually have here, but it's underneath a bunch of books, so I'm not gonna get it. But this one, I was really not expecting to like. This one's like a flat, like 4-star. It's not like lower or higher, because it was good. It was a really good book, and I was not expecting to be as invested as I was by the end. This is a YA fantasy about 2 sisters who are both animages, I think. That means they can both sort of communicate with animals and form like bonds with them that allow them to utilize them in battle or in other situations. And they are specifically phoenix riders, and they find a phoenix egg and it hatches, and it chooses one of the sisters to bond with, Veronica. So Val and Veronica, the sisters, at this point, something happens and they split up, and then Veronica decides that she wants to become a phoenix rider in this sort of legendary group, and she is disappointed to find that they only let boys in, so she decides to pose as a boy and become a part of this group. So that's kind of our plot of the story. The beginning was slow, the plot was slow to begin with, and it was really the characters that were pulling me through with this book. And in the beginning, I didn't care for the characters, and I didn't find their relationships with each other interesting. And then when the middle portion, I felt like the characters and their relationships got a lot more interesting to me, and I got invested through that. And so I was much more invested in the second 2/3 of this book rather than the first chunk of it. And overall, I thought the character work like in this like YA sort of story was pretty well done. There was definitely some things I wished I'd seen. The character twists were really good, or the plot twists were really good. And there wasn't too much plot in this one, which is usually a problem for me, but I really do think that the character relationships and seeing what would happen did sort of pull me along. I do think that's where this book really shines, is sort of seeing the complexities of this sister relationship at the center of the book, and then seeing Veronica as Nick sort of form different relationships with other people and animals. It was very good. So my 4.25 star of the month was The Ever Cruel Kingdom by Rin Shepeko. I really enjoyed this one a lot more than The Never Tilting World. I think I have a review for The Never Tilting World, so I will link that. I did enjoy this book a lot. It was a pretty solid conclusion. I think that a lot of the things that drove me like a bit mad in the first one of these, it was sort of fixed in this one, so I felt the character work and relationships was a lot better. I thought the plot that I had liked in The Never Tilting World was even better in this one, because we had more action and less sort of like fluff. I was really invested in every perspective and every couple this time, instead of having less of that investment in the first one. I just think this one did a really good job of wrapping itself up. I thought the ending was really good. It was appropriate for the story. It was just really good. It fit the story really well. It was a really good conclusion to a duology, and I ultimately do recommend this sci fantasy YA series a lot. Moving on to the 4.5 star that I had this month, and that was King and the Dragonflies by Kacen Callender. So this is a middle grade contemporary book about a boy named King who is grieving the loss of his brother. And King he's dealing with a lot of things, including his grief. So he's dealing with his grief. He's dealing with this sort of broken friendship that he had with this boy in the town, Sandy. And he is dealing with his sort of family situation being very complicated and not easy to deal with in everyone's grief. He's dealing with being a Black boy in New Orleans. Is it New Orleans? I don't know where I'm getting New Orleans, but it's in the bayou of Louisiana. And he's in a town with a lot of pretty racist white people. So he's dealing with the realities of coming of age as a Black boy, and all these friendship and family problems, but he's also finding things out about himself. And I don't want to say much more about this book than that, but it is a great book. It is really, really short. I read it in a single sitting. That's how good this was. It was just so refreshing to me to read it and just become immersed in this setting with these characters who I loved and felt for so much. It was just so beautifully written, and I think this book is so good and so necessary as a read. I think that it's necessary to have kids be able to reach for this book and find it. and I mean, I'm always going to recommend it. I think it was great. And then the final book that I read in the month of July, and it was my favorite book of the month and my only 5-star, that is Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. I loved this book so much. This is like the middle grade to end all middle grades. I've heard this from a lot of people, but it has so much good that you've seen before in other middle grades, but just does it so well, just phenomenally. I think if you like Percy Jackson, if you like Nevermore, I think this is sort of a really good mix of both of them, but with a lot of its own charm and its own like amazing creativity and its own heart to it that is just so stunning to read. Amari as a character is such an amazing main character, and she just controls this book so well. I don't know if that makes sense, but like Amari makes this book so much. The world is whimsical and beautiful and amazing. It deals with very real conversations that was interesting. It's just really, really good, and I just really, really, really enjoyed this book. The one thing that I thought was a little bit lacking was the ending. I did think that I wanted something else to be the ending. Like, I didn't love where we ended, and I'm a little nervous about the next book, but I have faith in this author that they will make me love it, because, I mean, look at what happened with this one. But the ending did feel a little bit anticlimactic, and also it wasn't exactly what I wanted to happen, so that was the only thing about this book, but it wasn't enough to drop this from a 5-star. This is definitely probably like going to be a new favorite series. It's like a new favorite middle grade. I love this book so much. Those were all the books that I read in July. Thank you for sticking around even through my long hiatus. Hopefully I'll be back somewhat regularly. Hopefully, I don't know when this internet's gonna get fixed, but hopefully I'll be able to, you know, edit it somewhere and get this up by Tuesday. Wish me luck. But until then, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.